Captain Falcon, won't you come with me? Captain Falcon, won't you come with? Captain Falcon, yeah. Don't you know I need you? I gotta be right by your side for the rest of my life. That's my Falcon, strapped. Yeah, that's my Desert Eagle. What? I'm way too fucking fly for the rest of my life. Captain Falcon, grab my piece. Don't you ever snatch my chain. Yeah, I'm pissed off. Gotta be pissed off. I ain't breaking back. Captain Falcon at my funeral. Falcon talent, bro. Falcons with the talent, bro. Show me moves, motherfucker. I don't think so. I wear ice on my chain. Oh, faggot, I stay in my lane. What? Yeah, faggot. Captain Falcon at my funeral. Yeah, Captain Falcon at my funeral. Yeah, Captain Falcon at my funeral. Captain Falcon, yeah. No one can defeat you. I gotta be right by your side.
Burundi is getting ready for its May 20th presidential vote, despite the global COVID-19 pandemic. During rallies in the cities of Bujumbura and Muramvia, supporters of the ruling CNDD-FDD had their temperatures taken. They were also required to wash their hands before attending campaign events.
Considering that social distancing will not be practically possible, we decided to use the thermos flash to measure the temperature at the entrance of the stadiums or places of gatherings.
With 15 cases of the new coronavirus and 1 death confirmed on Saturday, some Burundians believe that life must still go on.
If you prevent people from enjoying their freedom, their social life, their political life, their economic life, these people will suffer more than you anticipated. It will not be from COVID-19, but rather they will suffer from being restricted.
President Pierre Nkurunziza has promised to step aside after 15 years in office, raising questions about his motives. The ruling party has selected Army General Evariste Ndayishimiye as its candidate for the election builds for the 20th of May.
In Morocco, the police are stepping up checks to enforce the COVID-19 curfew. Here in the capital Rabat, security forces have taken over the city center, neighborhoods, coastal areas, roads, motorways, as well as railway stations. Control operations are carried out day and night at checkpoints to enforce the confinement rules. The controls are good and the road is being taken care of. The authorities help us quite a bit. So all is well. We just want people to stay at home until this pandemic is over. Moroccan police have registered over 77,000 violations of restriction measures. On May 3, Morocco had recorded 4,729 cases of COVID-19, including over 1,200 recoveries. A human chain stretching up to 4 kilometers through a township near Pretoria. A scene in locked-down South Africa amid the coronavirus pandemic. Monitored by police and armored vehicles, these Olivier-en-Hout-Bush residents had waited overnight for a non-governmental organization to distribute 2,200 tons of food, masks and gel disinfectant.
We slept here to catch the queues. So it took too long because we were too many. But at least we appreciate what the government is doing.
Though the 5-week lockdown has helped curb the virus, the measures have plunged millions of poor people into dire situations. The Mahlasedi Foundation hopes to ease the burden for this community.
Right now, we are trying to reach 30,000 people in this community with a food parcel. We're working with each area every day. Specific area, we've already handed out tags for food, and now they must come here and get their food and then they go home.
I'm so happy. I came here last night, but now I'm done. Thank you, God. Thank you, Mahlasedi Foundation.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has unveiled a package of economic and social support measures with more than $26 billion, of which 10% is earmarked for aid to the poor.
North Korea, after much speculation and rumors about his condition. US President Donald Trump said he was pleased with the public reappearance of the North Korean leader, whom he said appeared to be in good health. Since September 2018, agreements between the two Koreas provide for an easing of tension at the border.
Get your morning dose of news Monday through Friday at 6 a.m.
See you on the morning call only on Africa News.
make to go and get hold of a packet of cigarettes. You know, I've spoken to a lot of people that are, you know, law-abiding citizens that would never break any kind of law, but are having to go like through illegal routes to get their hands on a packet of cigarettes.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we've seen currently in many of our communities. I totally agree with you on that one, Ricky. We'll leave that one there for now. That's a debate that will keep on raging. It is 11 o'clock. It's time for the latest in Eyewitness News.
This is Eyewitness News.
Good morning, I'm Sviso Zulu. President Cyril Ramaphosa has once again defended the strict regulations governing the nationwide lockdown and other measures put in place as per the National Disaster Management Act, which has been enforced by government. In his weekly newsletter, the president reminds South Africans that although some of the decisions, such as the ban on cigarettes and alcohol sale, have polarized opinions, government is acting in the best interests of the right to life and dignity of all people. There has been a pushback against decisions made by the government through the COVID Command Council, which some South Africans singling out and attacking ministers who announced the committee's decisions. Teto Mahlakwana has more.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says while he knows how difficult the strict restrictions are for many in the country, they are all necessary as the government's overriding objective is to preserve life. The World Health Organization and other health experts have warned that cigarette smokers are vulnerable to contracting COVID-19. However, despite this, some in society have been up in arms over the decision to stop the sale of cigarettes. Ramaphosa says the measures, including the nationwide lockdown and closure of the country's borders, have proved effective in delaying the spread of the COVID-19. However, he added that South Africans must not be despondent as the worst is yet to come. He says although at this stage of the pandemic, other countries had far more infections than we currently do, this does not mean danger has passed. Scientific projections have shown that peak infection rate is yet to be reached in the country, which could be in the next few months. Ramaphosa implored the public to continue social distancing and practicing good hygiene as they adhere to the lockdown regulations, which he says many have been obeying. Teto Mahlakwana, Eyewitness News, Johannesburg.
Treasury General Dondo Mohajane says the country's unemployment rate could reach 40% due to the impact of the coronavirus. Some businesses have already shut their doors due to a month-long lockdown, which has restricted economic activity across the country as government tried to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Despite millions of South Africans returning to work today, there's concern about whether the country's economy will survive the effects of the pandemic. Certain sectors, including agriculture, forestry and fisheries and other industries, have been permitted to operate under level 4 lockdown to keep businesses afloat. Mohajane says there's a possibility that the country's already battered economy will see a major contraction.
The true reality again, I may not be direct because the numbers may not be real, but the speculation may be true. We could even reach almost 40% unemployment if things go the way they are. And it also depends on which sectors we're talking about.
Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula says he's impressed by the measures being implemented at the Gautrain as limited operations start to resume. Mbalula is at the Hatfield station this morning for an oversight inspection on the state of readiness of the transport service. Ahmed Kaji has more.
Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula spent the morning reviewing what is being implemented at the Gautrain station to ensure operations resume and commuter safety is guaranteed. An e-health scanner takes the temperature of commuters before they enter the station. Workers sanitize the train carriages, corridor walls and card scanners before every train leaves the station. Operating hours will be from 5 a.m. to 12 noon and then again from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Ahmed Kaji, Eyewitness News, Pretoria.
In KwaZulu-Natal, Premier Sihle Zikalala says 826 people have been arrested in just the last 3 days for breaching level 4 regulations in the province. Zikalala says this is disappointing but has vowed that law enforcement operations will be intensified. Officials will no longer only focus on motorists but will start moving into townships and some urban areas where many people are still not adhering to lockdown regulations. Nkosikona Duma has more.
Premier Sihle Zikalala says the easing of regulations does not mean that risks associated with COVID-19 have diminished. He says inspections will be carried out at all businesses as they resume their operations today for the first time since the start of the lockdown.
We are going to inspect in the road, in places of work, as well as in all shops that are operating.
Zikalala has also given reasons why eThekwini has moved to level 4 regulations, even though the provincial government was not initially keen on this, given the high number of COVID-19 infections in the metro.
The business community has been raising with us that they are getting a serious economic decline, and that is going to impact negatively to the economy. So we then decided that let us cooperate.
eThekwini accounts for 60% of all COVID-19 cases in the province. Zikalala says the city is being prioritized in the screening and testing of residents. Kosikon, Eyewitness News, Durban.
And Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says the country will extend its state of emergency until the 31st of May. Abe says he will review the nation's infection status next week to see if the order can be lifted beforehand. The Japanese leader says the high vigilance and stay-at-home policy remains unchanged in 13 regions with high infections, while the rest of the nation will see gradual resumption of economic and social activities. Gold is trading at $1,703.70 an ounce. The rand is at 18.77 to the dollar, 23.37 to the pound, 20.54 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $25.82 a barrel.
In Tembisa, there's been an accident on the R21 northbound near Olifantsfontein Road, slowing down traffic, while traffic lights are still out of order in Edenville at Modderfontein Road and Van Riebeek, as well as in Melville at Bearsnodia and Judith.
It's a fine day in Gauteng. Temperatures will peak at highs of 22 and 24 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour: President Cyril Ramaphosa has once again defended the strict regulations governing the national lockdown and other measures put in place as per the National Disaster Management Act, which has been enforced by government.
Eyewitness News. In touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, download the EWN app.
Are a constant threat to our way of life. Much of what we know about these silent pathogens is due to the work of some very daring scientists.
These are very intrepid scientists and scholars who are on the hunt for these new viruses or old ones that may have mutated. Instead of a trench coat, they'll wear a lab coat.
COVID-19 is the disease in all the headlines at the moment, but there are so many others which need to be managed.
There's epidemics going on all over the place and all the time. There are usually between 50 and 70 outbreaks or crises just on the African continent at any one time.
I'm Professor Trudy Lang, and coming up on Virus Hunters on the BBC World Service, I'll be meeting some extraordinary scientists who work among pathogens most of us are trying to avoid. Join me after the news.
Hello, I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. Italians can go out for physical exercise today for the first time in 2 months since Italy became the first country in the world to impose a national coronavirus lockdown. Parks are reopening, people can visit relatives within their region, and construction sites and factories are resuming work. Lia Cortapelle, a member of Parliament for the Democratic Party, which is part of the ruling coalition, said plans had been put in place to minimise the impact of easing lockdown.
We are inviting people to keep doing smart working. My hometown, which is Milan, in the heart of Lombardy, the town hall has phoned up all the major offices of the city, and apparently 80% of the people will keep working from home.
Italy has suffered nearly 29,000 coronavirus deaths, second only to the United States. Many other European countries are also taking steps towards lifting their lockdowns. They include Portugal, Spain, Croatia and Greece, where some small shops and hairdressers can start work again today. Our Europe correspondent Gavin Lee is following developments.
Portugal, for example, where you've got street shops, small ones, hairdressers, barbers, manicurists, bookstores, car dealerships reopening. Spain as well, the lockdown easing continues. Small businesses able to open. We know over the weekend people were allowed out for the first time outside of work or hospital appointments, where they have set hours for old and vulnerable and adults and children. Restaurants can serve from today in Spain for food, for takeaway as well.
Some schools will reopen in Germany and Austria, while in Hungary, Serbia and Slovenia, cafes and restaurants will begin operating with some restrictions. And Poland will allow hotels, shopping centres and some museums to open their doors again. The European Commission has approved more than $7 billion worth of French state aid to the national carrier Air France. The Competition Commissioner, Margrethe Vestager, said the French state guarantee on loans would provide the airline with the liquidity it needed to withstand the impact of the coronavirus outbreak. Airlines across Europe are struggling, with most of their planes grounded and little prospect of a recovery to the travel industry. There are also reports the French government plans to support the state rail company SNCF. President Trump has said he now believes that as many as 100,000 people could die of COVID-19 in the United States. Mr. Trump denied his administration had acted too slowly and said he was very confident there'd be a vaccine by the end of the year. Mr. Trump's remarks were aired on Fox News.
We have to get a vaccine. Whoever gets it, I'm gonna be their best fan, and I want it. I need the vaccine. This country needs the vaccine.
Scientists have warned, however, that this could take 12 to 16 months. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. Iran has allowed the reopening of mosques and schools in areas of the country that have been consistently free of the coronavirus. Religious gatherings had been banned since mid-March. The reopening is part of a phased relaxation of business and other activity that's been underway for weeks. Tunisia has also started easing a strict lockdown. It's allowed a return to work of half its civil servants and some renewed industrial activity. Egypt has permitted a limited reopening of its hotels for domestic tourists, and Lebanon is letting its restaurants and hair salons operate again. South Korea will start reopening schools from next week as it brings the coronavirus outbreak under control. Michael Bristow reports.
The first to return will be senior high school pupils, followed by other age groups in subsequent weeks. Classes have been held online since the delayed start of the new school year last month. Shopping and tourism were also making a comeback as the government relaxes social distancing restrictions. Just 8 new infections were reported on Monday. South Korea has been widely praised for limiting the spread of the virus through massive testing, without having to resort to the strictest lockdown rules employed in other countries.
The Taliban say they've carried out an attack on an army base in southern Afghanistan. The militants said dozens of soldiers were killed in the bombing. Local officials have confirmed the attack, but say only 5 people were killed. The assault took place late on Sunday in Helmand province. The base is said to have housed more than 100 soldiers and intelligence staff. The president of Kazakhstan has moved swiftly to consolidate his power and sideline his influential predecessor, Nursultan Nazarbayev. 2 days after sacking Mr. Nazarbayev's daughter as Senate Speaker, President Tokayev appointed his deputy chief of staff, a senator. Hours later, the aide, Maulan Ashimbayev, was unanimously elected Senate Speaker. That's the latest BBC News.
You are listening to Virus Hunters on the BBC World Service. I'm going to introduce you to some remarkable individuals doing some remarkable research. The scientists who work in some of the world's most challenging settings, often putting themselves dangerously close to parasites that most of us would run to avoid.
Virus hunters, the epidemiologists, the threat detectives, we've been going after these zoonotic diseases. These diseases have